some of the most critical issues in Afghanistan. The report said that most of the American assistance that has gone to Afghanistan since August 2021 has been largely ineffective. And there have been no effect on Afghan Taliban's style of governance.
This report endorses not only President Trump, but the nominated Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard's stance. Biden administration was very negligent in terms of a hurried and ill-planned mass exodus of the US troops from Afghanistan. Tulsi Gabbard has warned 2 days ago that the US, if these organizations emerge again, might have to return to Afghanistan one day.
How Pakistan can quickly take up this matter so that Pakistan's security may not be further compromised because of the frequent attacks due to the usage of these weapons.
Bilateral and multilateral diplomatic efforts, which need to build it further to translate into tangible, practical steps and measures which can influence Kabul into a more responsible statecraft.
Do you think engagement between Pakistan and the United States once again to deal jointly on issues in Afghanistan?
Both Washington and Islamabad view the current Afghan Taliban administration as irresponsible and incompetent. Number two, both Washington and Islamabad consider Kabul administration as negligent towards international obligations towards elimination and eradication of terrorism.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and welcome to program Inside in V News English. Afghanistan is once again in spotlight. A recent extraordinary report of US Special Inspector General on Afghanistan reconstruction has highlighted some of the critical issues in Afghanistan, including that the continuation of US financial assistance to Afghan Taliban regime have been largely ineffective. There have been violations of human rights. There have been violations of girls' rights. There have been violations of girls' education. There have been restrictions on media and many, many more things, and including that Afghan Taliban have not been able to take effective action against terrorist safe havens. And in today's program, we will discuss this particular issue and all other related issues, including that how new American administration would tackle some of the critical issues in Afghanistan, including the large leftover weapons, which are posing direct security threat to the security of Pakistan. To discuss this, we are fortunate to have with us Senior Strategic Affairs Analyst, Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali Saab. Very warm welcome to program Inside in V News English. I would like to first seek your comment on this US Special Inspector General's report on reconstruction of Afghanistan. Then we will move on to certain other critical issues. But this report is also significant. It has been carried by globally number of media outlets. And this highlights, as I said, some of the most critical issues in Afghanistan. The report said that most of the American assistance that has gone to Afghanistan since August 2021 has been largely ineffective. And there have been no effect on Afghan Taliban's style of governance. And they have been completely on defiance mode.
Thank you, Mr. Mateen, for having me on your show. I think the timing and the substance of this report is very significant for two reasons. First off, let me comment on the timing. This report has emerged immediately after Trump administration has taken office. Number one. Number two, it endorses Trump administration's stance on Afghanistan, which categorizes Biden administration's Afghan policy as a disaster and as an abject failure for two reasons. This report endorses not only President Trump, but the nominated Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard's stance that not only Biden administration was very negligent in terms of a hurried and ill-planned mass exodus of the U.S. troops from Afghanistan, which left over 427,000 weapons of U.S. origin in Afghanistan, which are currently being used frequently in terror attacks inside Pakistan. Secondly, as you've rightly pointed out, it also highlights that billions of US dollars were bleeding and being shared on different pretexts with Afghanistan through projects which allowed Afghan Taliban to benefit from the US funding indirectly. And that is something which is very serious and I think endorses Trump administration's policy review of Afghanistan. One, it considers Afghan policy of Biden administration as a disaster. Secondly, it considers Biden administration's Afghan policy as wasteful towards spending billions of dollars of US money. Secondly, it considers Biden administration's Afghan policy as dangerous because it allowed hundreds of thousands of US arms and weapons to be left in irresponsible hands of Afghan Taliban, which is why it is being used against Pakistan. And lastly, and most importantly, the fourth aspect is that Afghanistan has again, due to this irresponsible Biden administration's policy, become a hotbed of global and regional terrorist organizations, including Daesh, including Al-Qaeda, which is why Tulsi Gabbard has warned 2 days ago that the US, if these organizations emerge again, might have to return to Afghanistan one day.
Dr. Saab, that's correct. But whenever Americans have been dealing with Afghanistan, Pakistan was always consulted. Pakistan have been on board since last almost more than 21 years, particularly after 9/11 and subsequent all developments. Pakistani political military leadership have been consulted by the American political and military leadership. Please share your thoughts that this time, as this particular report and all other related developments are alarming. Do you think engagement between Pakistan and United States once again to deal jointly on issues in Afghanistan? Because Pakistan has deeper understanding.
I think I can clearly identify three areas of possible convergence between Washington and Islamabad on Afghanistan. Number one, I think Pakistan's stance towards Afghanistan has been endorsed by proportionate and timely sharing of security concern by the incoming Trump administration, which means that both Washington and Islamabad view the current Afghan Taliban administration as irresponsible and incompetent. Number two, both Washington and Islamabad consider Kabul administration as negligent towards international obligations towards elimination and eradication of terrorism. Number three, Trump administration particularly is concerned about wasteful expenditure through development funds indirectly, which has allowed Afghan Taliban to sustain themselves. Now, that is also a common concern in Islamabad and Washington. Number four, a common concern is the availability of hundreds of thousands of US origin
Leftover
weapon
weapons.
systems,
Exactly.
which are in the hands of Afghan Taliban, but are being frequently and actively being used by TTP in their terror attacks inside Pakistan. And you are aware that recently Trump administration demanded that Afghan Taliban return these weapons to the US, which proves that these four areas present an area of mutual convergence between Washington and Islamabad. And in days to come, I hope that there will be greater coordination, cooperation on CT and Afghanistan between Washington and Islamabad.
And since you, in your two of your answers, you spoke about this very large number of most sophisticated weapons which are available in Afghanistan, and there is no responsibility visible on the part of Afghan Taliban to handle, because these weapons are directly reaching out to the militants, to the terrorists. And Pakistan has raised this issue number of times, not only with Afghan Taliban, but with the international community. So what is quickly, because we have seen just the other day the martyrdom of more than 18 soldiers at FC in Kalat, and then there have been intelligence-based operations in different parts of Balochistan and KP. How Pakistan can quickly take up this matter so that Pakistan's security scenario, Pakistan's security may not be further compromised because of the frequent attacks due to the usage of these weapons?
I think the very fact that the Trump administration has expressed concern at the situation in Afghanistan, and also considered the revival of global terrorist organizations from Afghan territory as an international threat, vindicates Pakistan's stance and foreign policy. And this proves that Pakistan's concerns were neither unilateral nor regional, but are being increasingly shared by global powers, which includes China,
True.
which includes US, which includes Russia. So I think this is an evidence that Pakistan's stance and the ground situation in Afghanistan is factual and has been appreciated and shared by all three emerging, resurgent, and status quo power centers in the world. But I think there are definitely bilateral and multilateral diplomatic efforts which need to build it further to translate into tangible, practical steps and measures which can influence Kabul into a more responsible statecraft and more responsible policy review. I think in terms of multilateral forum, Pakistan is actively involved in Shanghai Cooperation Organization,
True.
which is an important forum led by Beijing, which has serious concerns about terror attacks on Chinese interests and personnel. Similarly, Afghanistan has again registered as a rising threat in the US radar system. And I think that is a common chord which Islamabad can strike with Washington, both at the military to military track, but also at the diplomatic and political track. But I think this issue must be reinforced at other forums like United Nations, like OIC, so that a coordinated and intense international diplomatic effort can be initiated to put pressure on Kabul and force it to behave responsibly and act as a responsible member of international community.
One important thing, whenever Pakistan gave positive signal, Pakistan extended cooperation, Pakistan extended diplomatic support, financial support to Kabul, Pakistan went out of the way to Taliban to support them, to strengthen their capacity. But the response has always been negative. So with this current suspension of financial assistance from United States, do you think situation will be further aggravated in Afghanistan, because that financial assistance is the only source of the foreign income?
I think in order for Kabul to review its irresponsible policy towards deliberately and consistently neglecting the rising threat of terrorism from Afghan territory. A concerted, coordinated diplomatic effort is required at multilateral level. I earlier suggested that SCO, UN, OIC, EU, and at bilateral level, both Beijing and Washington should be engaged by Islamabad to ensure it does not allow Kabul administration to continue to exploit the funding and diplomatic space and continue to tolerate and support terror outfits on its territory. Secondly, I think there are three reasons why Kabul administration perhaps has not done what it should have done. Number one, I think, as you pointed out, for the last 46 years, no country has supported, helped the Afghan people the way Pakistan has done. I think it is perhaps, it has no parallel in international history. We accorded hospitality to millions of homeless Afghans, like no nation has ever done. Look at the situation of Palestinians. Look at the situation of Syrians. Nobody is willing to give them space. Even the way the illegal migrants are expected to be banished and settled in Guantanamo Bay by the Trump administration provides a useful lesson in international politics, that how responsible powers deal with illegal immigrants. I think that is a lesson that the Afghan government should also consider, because and not take Pakistan's goodwill for granted. Secondly, I think it is also unfortunate that perhaps due to some support and false promises from New Delhi, it seems that the current Kabul administration is under the influence of New Delhi as well, and it is attributing some false hopes from them as well, which have neither delivered nor helped the Afghan people in past, nor is likely to help them in future, but will only try to stab the historic, close, cordial relations between Pakistani nation and the Afghan people. So it is very important, and I urge the Afghan people to urge and demand from the Kabul administration that in their own interest, they should demand the Kabul administration to be responsible, to live up to the international obligations, to fulfill the Doha Accord, and also be responsible and lawful towards Pakistan and respect Pakistan's genuine security concerns, so that the regional connectivity projects that are emerging in this region also allow the Afghan nation to benefit from them, rather than relying on foreign funding and harboring of terrorist outfits.
There is another latest development that one of the counter-terrorism operation conducted on 30th and 31st of January, there was a Afghan young citizen who was son of the deputy governor of Baghdad province. This is a clear indication that Afghan citizens are directly involved in various subversive terrorist acts in Pakistan. Do you think it's the failure of Afghan Taliban administration to prevent its citizens from going into the terror networks which are being operated in Pakistan? And the latest terrorist who has been killed is not an ordinary person, son of the deputy governor.
I think this information that you have shared about the direct and personal involvement of the son of a serving deputy governor of Afghanistan was involved in a terror incident in Pakistan.
Exactly.
Is the ultimate evidence that in reality, Afghan Taliban and TTP are not two different outfits. They both share the same ideology. There is social context in which there are intermarriages, and in some operations, TTP go back and seek refuge in Afghan territory, while some Afghan Taliban also, depending upon their business interests or family ties, travel to TTP bases. Thirdly, I think there is a complete coordination at the logistical, training, and operational level. And lastly, and most unfortunately, there have been several instances in which evidences were found that the planning and the selection of targets, the direction, the facilitation of terror attacks inside Pakistan territory was actively and clearly done from Afghan soil. And Pakistani intelligence agencies actively traced direct phone calls in which the terrorists operating inside Pakistan territory were receiving direct instructions how to proceed to their targets, which targets to engage, and how to destroy them. So these are very unfortunate realities which I think neither the international community nor Kabul administration can ignore. And therefore, as the UN report mentioned, like the Trump administration has reiterated, like Tulsi Gabbard, the nominated director of US National Intelligence, has warned, Afghanistan, unfortunately, has again become a hotbed for global, not just regional terror outfits. And it is no longer a threat only to Pakistan, but it has emerged as a global threat. And I think there are opportunities for Pakistan's diplomats to share their concerns with all those countries who consider Afghanistan as not just a security threat, but a future threat to their regional and global interests. And therefore, I think there are opportunities for us to explore greater cooperation, both with Beijing and Washington, because terrorism is not just a Pakistani policy, but counterterrorism is again a important issue of international peace and security, which affects both status quo, emerging, and resurgent powers.
One important thing that there is a growing pressure on Afghan Taliban, UN reports, United States reports. There have been concern by international community. If Taliban regime is dislodged, so do you think an elections take place or an elected government comes, which we don't see? So what is finally the way out then? Dislodging Afghan Taliban, do you think that is the only way forward to bring stability?
I think as a Pakistani, I would not like to say or comment or advise the Afghani people who should be governing them and meeting their expectations. However, I must emphasize that the Afghan nation must be more demanding from their government, that the government should be sensitive to the interests of their own people. Afghan nation has suffered far more than perhaps any other nation in the last 46 years. Poverty, malnutrition, unemployment, crime, drugs trade, smuggling, homelessness. They have faced all challenges to human security that one can imagine. And therefore, they deserve Pakistani neighbors and global communities' support to lead a normal, respectable, and safe and prosperous lives. And therefore, it is very important for the international community to advise the current Kabul administration that it is in the interest of Afghanistan itself that it meets the international obligations, it lives up to the Doha Accord commitments, it eradicates terrorism from its borders, it forms an inclusive political government which is representative respectful, and acceptable to all communities and regions, so that it can bring stability to Afghanistan and be seen as a responsible member of international community.
Thank you so much. And concluding this, peace and security in Afghanistan is vital, not only for Afghanistan's own socio-economic development, but also for Pakistan, but also for the region. And the presence of terrorist networks, and the way Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali Saab has said that the close cooperation and alliance and allegiance between Afghan Taliban and Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan would pose a serious threat not only to Pakistan's security, but also to the global security. And Pakistani diplomacy needs to be more proactive so that Pakistan may tell the world what exactly is happening and what exactly Pakistan has been saying. Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali Saab, once again, thank you so much. Despite your busy schedule, you participated in our program and shared your thoughts, views, and analysis on some of the emerging issues in Afghanistan, which are of great concern for Pakistan, for international community. Dear viewers, till our next program, goodbye and Allah Hafiz from studios.